Welcome to Nerd Alert. I'm Jeff Rubin, here with the editor of Dorkly, Brian Murphy, and actor-comedian Thomas Middleditch. This week, Lucasfilm followed through on threats to start re-releasing the Star Wars movies, all 6 Star Wars movies, in 3D. They're starting with The Phantom Menace on February 12, 2012. We will be talking to a man who put up a critique of The Phantom Menace that was 70 minutes long and seen by millions online. How many of his complaints were that the original film was only in 2D? Tiny Wings, a 99-cent iPhone game from Germany, overtook perennial bestseller Angry Birds on the App Store sales chart, but how many of those sales were old people trying to buy Angry Birds? We got our first good look at Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull in the upcoming Captain America movie. Is the costume good enough that when the film comes out, we'll be rooting for the Nazis? But first, Nintendo released Pokemon Black and White this week. It features over 150 brand new Pokemon, 3-on-3 battles, and new multiplayer features, but is playing the new Pokemon game worth admitting that you're playing the new Pokemon game? Your thoughts on the subject, Murph?
I think it's a very good Pokemon game. They've kind of stuck with the formula where you're still going to 8 different gyms, you're still fighting the Elite Four, you still, like, don't have a dad for some reason.
I see Thomas already laughing, shaking his head in disappointment at you.
Pokemon is like Pogs.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're
Pokemon, Digimon, all the Mons. It's for 8-year-olds to pester their parents to buy them the new toys, and the fact that grown humans are playing it is a travesty.
I thought the villain in this one was interesting because in previous Pokemon games, the villains were all about simply making trouble, maybe making it double. But in this one, the villain gets this. He has like a real philosophy. He has a motivation. He wants to liberate the Pokemon. He thinks only then, if the humans aren't barking orders at them, can they rise to their true potential. And I'm playing the game, and I was like, you know what? That's not a terrible point. Maybe Getsus is onto something.
Pikachu's a good guy, right? He should be free.
They're only as good as their trainer.
Is that a line in the song?
But it kind of seems like they wrote the story and then they're like, wow, the bad guys kind of have a point here. Maybe we just need to have them doing like random evil things. Like right in the beginning of the game, you catch the bad guy like just kicking a Pokemon just for no reason.
Pokemon's not a game with moral ambiguity. They have to be like bad guy, bad guy.
There's no gray area. It's like, oh, he's got some good points. Let's make him a Pokemon kicker.
Real quick, all-time favorite Pokemon. Mine's Snorlax.
Possibly Bidoof.
Moving on to a different kind of monster, the Nazi Red Skull has always been Captain America's arch nemesis, and now, thanks to Entertainment Weekly, we know what he will look like in the upcoming Captain America film. Comments on the Entertainment Weekly site were ecstatic and ranged from, looks awesome, to, I prefer the 80s version, not, to, looks like a sexy Skeletor. Obviously, the costume's awesome. The only question left is it enough to make you actually see the Captain America movie? Thomas.
His costume is the only concerning part because it looks very sort of like, I'm a supervillain! Look at my extravagant clothing!
But that's Red Skull. Red Skull's from the 40s. He was trained by Hitler. It doesn't get any more evil than that.
Yeah, but it's always like a balance nowadays when you're making superhero movies of like, do you do like the old school costumes? Because if you had Wolverine and like the Thing and his like orange and black costume, it would look kind of ridiculous.
I think a Red Skull mask could have definitely ended up looking not terrifying, but they did it.
He looks mean. He looks like mean. And if he were to fight Skeletor, assuming they're brothers, which is what is in my mind, I think he would beat him. I think he would beat Skeletor up.
It's interesting you mentioned crossovers because they're subtitling this movie Captain America the First Avenger, and now Marvel's trying to build this thing they're calling the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's just another Marvel continuity. Do we need another one?
I think that's awesome.
You two looked at each other like,
And it's awesome that now they actually have to be like responsible for their films. They can't just be like, oh, 2 Hulk movies, awful, let's just redo it and do another one. They have to be like, we write this, it has to make sense because other movies are depending on it.
Yeah. It definitely ticked off the collector's part of my brain where I was like, well, now I gotta see Captain America or else I'm never gonna get the Avengers. I just won't be able to understand it.
Yeah.
Moving on, Tiny Wings is an iPhone game simple enough to be played with one button that has received wide critical acclaim. But how do you compare it to big boy games like Mass Effect 2 or Red Dead Redemption? Is that like comparing an episode of Friends to something like Inception? What do you think, Murph?
I think you can't really compare the two. I don't think they're in direct competition at all. Pointing at birds isn't the same as like fighting aliens and having sex with aliens.
You're right that it's not competing. I think something like this or Cut the Rope has really increased the reach of the video game playing audience. I see people on the subway totally focused on their iPhone playing games, and they look like totally normal people, but now they're addicted to video games just like us. Isn't that kind of cool?
The power! You're one of us now.
See what you guys have been missing?
Yeah. I think it's great. I'm really happy about the recent sort of like surge of super casual gaming, like on iPhones or whatever else, the entire Nintendo Wii. But it's like, it's cool that it's like, and me as like a hardcore gamer, someone who has to limit his game time so he doesn't play all day. They're still fun. Like, I love Tiny Wings, and I love, like, my iPhone is like pages and pages of stupid little games that I just like play when I've got a few minutes.
It's like sometimes you want a steak dinner, but sometimes you just want a bag of chips. Yeah. Our next guest released a critique of The Phantom Menace that was almost as long as the film itself. Let's take a look at the clip.
I want you to tell me who the main character of The Phantom Menace was. You might be thinking that it's Anakin, because he was like a slave and saved the day at the end by accidentally blowing up the starship. But the audience doesn't meet Anakin until 45 minutes into the movie. And then the things that are happening around him are pretty much out of his control or understanding. If a protagonist has no concept of what's going on or what's at stake, then there's no real tension or drama. Without that, there's no story. So the conclusion is that there isn't one.
Please join me in welcoming via robo-guest Mike Stoklasa. Mike, how you doing?
Hello, everybody. Hello.
We don't have to talk about how you feel about The Phantom Menace. That's pretty clear. How good would these new special effects and this new 3D have to be to make you enjoy this film?
I think the special effects are good enough. I think that's not the problem with the movies, of course. But yeah, I don't think I'll be seeing The Phantom Menace in 3D anytime soon.
They've had some trouble in the past with these 2D to 3D conversions, like The Last Airbender and Clash of the Titans. Do you think Lucas is going to do anything better to make it in any way, shape, or form more palatable?
I don't know. Lucas has been, the guy who's always advancing technology, so possibly, but I don't know what you can do. I've actually never seen a 2D movie converted into 3D, so I'd be interested to see it just based on that. But
I like how you opened with, I'm definitely not going to see it, and then you were like, but I'd be kind of interested in seeing the 2D to 3D. I mean, maybe I'll see it.
I think you should release the first Star Wars film first, I think that would do better.
Right, well, we're going to get there. They're going in narrative order. We just got to wait 3 years to get to the movies anyone actually wants to see. How many times did you watch The Phantom Menace to put together your critique of it?
I actually saw it before it came out.
Whoa! How'd you do that?
I worked in a movie theater at the time, so I got to go to an exhibitor screening.
Do you remember back in '99, before we knew how bad that movie was, and the excitement of people like bursting into the door and rushing to go see the movie?
Me and my friend did bring our lightsabers.
Oh yeah, we brought our lightsabers.
We were so excited, and I left so mad.
I think after I saw the movie, I didn't immediately recognize how terrible it was. Did you recognize how bad it was immediately?
I, of course, was, overwhelmed with a lot of the hype, and it was really exciting seeing it early like that, because everyone was cheering, and, it was exciting, but, yeah, you had this sinking feeling afterwards. I was just like, there was going to be a nuclear war or something. You couldn't tell anybody.
So you also did a 90-minute review of Attack of the Clones. You did a 90-minute review of Revenge of the Sith. And I feel like the nerd hive mind has kind of come to the consensus that maybe Revenge of the Sith isn't quite as bad as Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace. Maybe it has a few more redeeming qualities. Do you think there's any truth to that?
It's missing a lot of the elements that made all the first ones bad, like no kids, no horrible love story, very little Jar Jar Binks, if any. So it's the most palatable one out of all three, but it's also very boring as well.
I hate all three of them with such a passion, and I think any Star Wars fan who's like, I think they're okay, is just like trying to save that childhood memory of like Star Wars is awesome. They are all so bad. 90 minutes isn't long enough to describe how bad those movies are.
Mike, level with me. I know The Phantom Menace is not very good, but as a Star Wars fan, are you going to pay to see it in 3D next year?
No.
Thomas.
No.
Murph.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I might go see it too. But what about you guys? Are you going to see The Phantom Menace in 3D? Go to the Nerd Alert Facebook page, vote in our poll. Don't vote if you like The Phantom Menace. I'm genuinely curious if Star Wars fans are so into Star Wars, they will pay $20 to see a movie they don't like in 3D. That is all the time we have time for today on Nerd Alert. Mike has a new review show coming out called Half in the Bag. They're going to be reviewing new movies. It's going to be on redlettermedia.com. Definitely check that out. Murph is going to be at Penny Arcade Expo this weekend. If you're watching this video after Monday, you already missed it. But Murph will be on the Kill Screen panel and with the rest of the Dorkly team challenging strangers, probably children, to Pokemon battles. Nerd Alert will not be around next week because I'm going to be at South by Southwest. We're doing a show on Thursday with Dan and Streeter and a panel on Monday with Streeter and Pat's Balls. So if you're in Austin, definitely come check that out. Nerd Alert will be back in 2 weeks to discuss the new Mortal Kombat game. Until then, enjoy CGY, our bad special effects of the week. Later, losers.